Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushappy.com, which is a very easy website to remember. Before we get started, this is the trigger warning. This is a horror podcast. We're going to be talking about horror things. We don't know what we're going to be talking about because, it's fun and dynamic like that, but we could delve into sensitive subjects like child abuse, R-word, SA, all those things, murder. Just, we could talk about dark things, but that's not guaranteed, but it is possible. So we have to do a disclaimer.
Right.
Yeah. Fuck. I can say it now. I haven't done that in a while.
Yes. You're being such a good boy.
Yeah, gotta even things out a little bit.
Yeah.
Anyway, with the disclaimer out of the way, what do you got coming down the pike, Steve?
I guess the main thing that we got going on right now is still doing events on Discord. We do 3 weekly events, watch party, watching movies on Saturdays, a drawing party on Sunday, where Chris live streams himself working on his webcomic pieces, which you can find at piecesofflesh.com. And then we also do a listen party where we live stream episodes of our podcast and chat about them. So if you want to come hang out and listen and chat about the episodes, come find us on Discord. There's a link to our Discord server on our homepage. Just come to horrormakesushappy.com and it's right there on the front page. But today we are talking to Mr. Trevor Henderson. He's an artist and an author known for Odd Noises in an Empty Room, Bad Things Coming. And, well, I'll let you talk about what you got coming up before we get into the meat of the interview. You want to let us know what you're currently working on?
Yeah, hey, nice to meet you. Thank you for having me on.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, I guess the most recent thing that I can talk about is I wrote a middle grade to young adult kind of scary chapter book for kids for Scholastic called Scare Waves last October. It's like Kids versus Monsters, kind of like it for middle graders. And you can get that in any bookstore, I guess. And
Cool.
Yeah, that's the most recent thing, I guess.
Awesome. Well, I'm not sure how much. It's been a little while since we talked about having you on, so it is a recap. Basically, what we do here is we will go through your love of horror as a genre from childhood through adulthood, and then at the end we talk about any common themes that have cropped up and how those topics might intersect with horror. But that said, it's not meant to be a therapy session, so if there's any questions you don't want to answer, just say pass and we can move on.
Yeah.
But starting with childhood, what are some of your earliest memories of scary things?
Oh, man. I mean, I have been a fan of horror since I was a very small child. My dad is, and especially was when I was younger, like a huge horror fan. So, just through osmosis, I got a lot of stuff from him, and it became like a very recurring bonding session with my dad from like when I was like 4 or 5 onwards, where we would watch like all kinds of stuff that was maybe a little inappropriate for a kid of that age, but it could have maybe given me some issues and gone in the wrong way. But thankfully, it went the opposite direction and kind of like made horror into this, horror into a happy place, exactly like your podcast says. But my dad used to work really late into the morning, working unloading trucks, and he would come home and then he would sneak up and he'd wake me up and we'd like sneak downstairs on a school night when I was like in grade 7. And watch like, Return of the Living Dead, Army of Darkness, like, Italian horror, like The Beyond, like the Fulci films, all kinds of crazy stuff. And
we started early on the good stuff.
We started really early, yeah. And then, yeah, exactly. And then on the other side of that, he had like a bedside table in his bedroom that was just full of like, the latest Stephen King, the latest, a little bit of Dean Koontz, even though I don't really like Dean Koontz. But I read all the Stephen King. I read Skeleton Crew when I was insanely young. And that just like, that combined with Goosebumps, combined with Are You Afraid of the Dark, just like became the gateway. And I was voracious and I just jumped into everything, but definitely, yeah, that was kind of the start.
How old were you when you read Skeleton Crew?
I read Skeleton. I gotta estimate because I don't remember exactly, but I was young. I mean, I moved on from Skeleton Crew pretty quick, and I remember reading it in like grade 9 or maybe grade 9 or 10 tops.
Okay.
Yeah, so pretty young. I just love that stuff. Then I jumped to Peter Straub and like all the different contemporaries past Stephen King. And yeah.
Well, the reason I ask, for example, when you say grade 9 or 10, that to me that's high school, that's teen years, and you
that's true,
mentioned.
Yeah.
So I was thinking Skeleton Crew, like Was that high school, like teen years, or was that like
Skeleton Crew was definitely a couple years before my teen years, because I distinctly remember reading The Mist, which is collected for the first time. No, second time. Collected for the first time by Stephen King in Skeleton Crew. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I couldn't put an exact date on it, but it was definitely before teen years. It was definitely early teens, high school years. But before that, I started with Skeleton Crew for sure, and a bunch of other ones.
It's a good age to read it, I think. It's relatable.
Did you read that before Goosebumps?
I was reading it around the same time. Like, I read Goosebumps when I was way younger, and then I was kind of finishing out Goosebumps and moving on to, like, other stuff like that after that, I think. Yeah.
Well, that's good. That way it doesn't, like, set the improper expectations. You start off with Stephen King. Then you're like, this is kind of...
I kind of I completely sidestepped all the Fear Street books because I jumped right from Goosebumps to Stephen King just because it was in my proximity. Like, it was lying around the house. And I kind of regret that. I wish I'd been able to read some Fear Street when I was younger and kind of in the age range for that.
Right.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify, because the way it came out was you'd mentioned Skeleton Crew first and then Goosebumps, and I'm hearing that myself.
No, it was definitely Goosebumps first. It's just Skeleton Crew stands out more than Goosebumps. I mean,
not judging if you had. It just would have been a funny thing. That's all.
Yeah. No. It definitely was Goosebumps first because, part of the reason I did Scarewaves was because I knew it would be in the Scholastic Book Fair newsletter, and it would be for kids at the Scholastic Book Fair, which was like a treasured part of my childhood when I was growing up and getting like the Goosebumps, but not just the Goosebumps, the weird knockoff Goosebumps, like Spine Tinglers and Bone Chillers and stuff like that. And I was like, I can write my own version of that and have it be like something that'll pop up in like the flyer and everything. So I was really excited about that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you remember a particular Goosebumps book?
Oh yeah. Probably the Monster Blood books, which there are probably like 18 of those now, but the first one I distinctly remember loving the art on the front cover so much because it's just like this pool of gnarly slime like crawling down a flight of stairs, and the lighting's really beautiful. I believe all the art for those was done by Tim Jacobus, who's just like an airbrush artist, I'm pretty sure, and it's just such a distinct, iconic like look, and it makes those books stand out so much to me. That one, and I really love the one called The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight, which had a spooky scarecrow on the front. It's really all you need. That and concurrently, like when I was reading Goosebumps, it was the Scary Stories Tell in the Dark by Alvin Schwartz and Stephen Gammell. And those illustrations by Stephen Gammell are like iconic. They had like everything I do up to, I'm almost 40 now. And they're such an influence on me that like it's intrinsic. Like you can't separate those drawings from everything I do.
You can see there's a little bit of an influence.
Yeah, I imagine so. I get it a lot. Yeah.
So with the Scarecrow Walks at Midnight, other than the fact that it was a scarecrow in particular, was there anything about that story that you liked?
The art stands out more for me now than the actual plots of the Goosebumps books. I read them all. I know I did back then, but they all blend together. The one that, like, conversely, the evil scarecrow story in Scary Stories Tell in the Dark is like horrifying. And was way darker and stranger than the Goosebumps one. I don't remember the Goosebumps story at all. I just remember that great image of the scarecrow on the front. But I will always remember Harold in Scary Stories Tell in the Dark, who is laying out somebody's flayed skin on the roof to dry. It's crazy for kids.
It's for kids.
Yeah.
I know someone else brought up Harold because they were telling a story about Halloween. One of their neighbors had put up a skeleton and put a sign on it that said Harold.
Oh, that's very good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Harold lives on. Harold's so scary.
Yeah. Shit. What the hell? Kilroy was here. Let's see. Night of the Living Dead. What'd you like about that?
Oh, Night of the Living Dead? The original? Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I think
he said Return of the Living Dead, didn't he?
Oh, I said Return of the Living Dead. Yeah. Sorry.
Did you?
I saw Return of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead before Night of the Living Dead, and it has cast them more favor. I think they're better films. Night of the Living Dead, is a classic, obviously, but Return of the Living Dead is a perfect film. It's a perfect horror comedy. It's perfect, like the vibes of the EC Comics, like Tales from the Crypt Vault of Horror, which I was also devouring at the same time. So, obviously I love that so much. Mm-hmm. And then, I think Dawn of the Dead is one of the best films ever made. I watched that at the same time. And then came back around to Night of the Living Dead a little bit later, and I think it kind of pales in comparison to those. Yeah, but I was watching everything around that time, like all the 80s kind of classics and minor movies. Evil Dead, obviously Evil Dead 2. The Blob, 1988. I saw really young, and that one's messed up.
The phone booth scene.
My God, yeah.
It's one of many. There's so many visceral scenes in that film.
Yeah, the phone booth scene, the scene where they set up the hero for the first 20 minutes and then he immediately gets melted. The scene where they acid melt a kid, like a proper kid in the sewer. It's crazy for the. They didn't do that back then. That's a standout. It's crazy. It's an amazing movie.
So I'm already starting to notice this is something that's come up in a number of our other calls too, where for people who are creators in the business, it can sometimes be hard to separate whatever the initial emotional reaction to something was from the love of something as an auteur.
Yeah.
And so like everything that we've talked about so far, you've just referenced an image without talking about the emotions that it triggered, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh yeah. I can see that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a very image, obviously, motivated person. So the memories are definitely associated with that more than anything else, I guess.
So there are some people who have reported that they were scared of horror at a particular point, and then after a dividing line, then they became fans of horror.
Yeah.
But for you, it sounded like you were pretty much a fan from the start. Was there a dividing line where prior to that line you were scared of something?
It's 70-30, 70% of just being a human, just passionate fan from the start. But also I was, enticed by that 30% of the stuff that actually got through that, even from the beginning, that kind of, I guess, tolerance. I didn't really get scared by horror really young, but when something did, it really cemented how much I loved the other stuff, I guess, if that makes sense. It became part and parcel. I remember seeing Black Christmas and being terrified of the eye in the door crack at one point. And even as much as I love Scary Stories to the Dark when I was young, there's still one image from that book that I couldn't even look at when I was a kid. It's just a full face image of this eyeless female ghost, cadaverous corpse ghost. And, it just traumatized me. But, I loved it so much because it was traumatizing me at the same time. I loved getting a reaction from stuff, I guess. Yeah, absolutely.
What was it that scared you about the ghost?
It's if you can see the image, it's still pretty scary to anybody, I think. It's like a full-faced image of just this rotten corpse with no eyes. And it's looking into your soul with no eyeballs. It's horrendous. It's wonderful. I have it printed out on the back of a jacket I wear, a jean jacket. There's a big image on the back because it's stuck with me for so long. I guess it's because when I was a kid, it looks like it's looking through the page at you. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Kind of breaking the fourth wall a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, felt dangerous, right, when you're young.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny because I could potentially see something similar with what you just said about Black Christmas and the eye in the door crack.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's another movie that, one of the handful of movies that still scares the crap out of me into my later life, I guess. Yeah, that and a handful of others that are, but that Black Christmas always stands out, and it's that image in Black Christmas that really sticks out to me.
I always comment on this, but I've never checked. I am curious. Which one did Bob Clark do first? Black Christmas or Christmas Story?
He did Black Christmas first. I'm 99% sure. I'd have to check.
74 on Black Christmas.
Yeah.
And Christmas Story. 83. Yeah. So maybe Christmas Story was his palate cleanser. That went a little too hard with Black Christmas. Let's do something nice.
Maybe. Yeah. And then moved on to Baby Geniuses or whatever. But
yeah. Oh my God, that's right.
The man contained multitudes. The fact that you can do something like that Black Christmas and also Dead of Night. I think that was early 70s, which is just bleak and horrible and wonderful. And then go on to do Baby Geniuses and Christmas Story. It's wild. Though, both those films, I haven't seen Baby Geniuses, but I know Christmas Story has a real mean streak in it. It's a comedy, but it does have a bit of that edge from his other stuff, I think.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So to focus again on that 70-30, the 30%, you'd mentioned, so this eyeless female ghost, Black Christmas, anything else stand out to you from that 30%?
Yeah, actually. And this bothered me for years because not only did it scare me, this image, but I couldn't figure out what movie it was from for like a decade plus until I saw it again. But I had this memory of seeing this movie that my dad had brought home when I was really young. And it was a little girl in an all white room, and she has red hair and pigtails. And there's this pool of really horrible, syrupy looking blood that's like flowing across the floor to her really slowly. And if she touches it, it's implicit that it's like acid, it's going to burn her or something. And it's just like this image stuck with me for so long of her being pushed into the corner by this like wave of like almost melted strawberry jam blood. And I was like, I couldn't figure out whether I dreamed it or what it was, but it just bothered me for the longest time. And then I found out it's an image from The Beyond, the Lucio Fulci film.
Okay.
Which is a classic and I love deeply. And it doesn't scare me anymore. Like, unlike, the image in Black Christmas, which does. But it stuck with me just because it was like a itch I couldn't scratch, not knowing where it was from. And also, like, it was just so surreal and abstract out of context, I guess.
Yeah, that can do it.
And I'm sure there's others, but those are the big ones for sure.
Well, that's fine. Usually we try to stick to 2 or 3. That'll work. Let's see. So you mentioned your dad was a fan of horror. Did you participate in Halloween as a kid?
Did I practice painting what, sorry?
Participate in Halloween.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Participate in Halloween. Yes. I loved Halloween. I didn't really like getting dressed up so much. Like I was not super big on costumes for whatever reason when I was a little kid. But I did love the holiday and I loved going out and I still do. It's my favorite holiday, my favorite time of year. It's my favorite weather in the year is that brief couple weeks. I'm kind of dying right now in Toronto because it's really hot and everyone's enjoying summer. And I'm like, I'm done. I need to.
Right.
We need to move on now. I've had my fun. Yeah.
There are 2 schools of thought currently. There are the people that are like, oh, summer's almost over. And then those people are like, yes, Halloween soon. Yeah.
I love summer. I love, everything summer entails. But also I'm like, I'm already looking over summer's shoulder at October on its way. Yeah. But I do love Halloween. I couldn't love Halloween more. I love it. Even now, the only party me and my partner still put on, and we try to every year, is a Halloween party at our place. It's the only we really throw the boat out for and really try and do. But yeah, all the way from when I was a little kid was my favorite holiday as well.
So normally we would ask for a favorite or least favorite costume, but if you didn't like dressing up, then you might only have a least favorite.
I never really went crazy with it, but I do remember one year that I did go as the Fly. But not the Goldblum fly. I went as the
classic black and white fly with the
black and white fly with the big head and the one bug hand. So I had the lab coat, and I had we couldn't find a fly mask, so we had to get a bee mask of all things and repaint it. My dad repainted it.
That works.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite when I was younger. When I was older in my 20s, I did a pitch perfect Jason Voorhees from the second Friday the 13th film when he has the sack head instead of the hockey mask. Like exact same shirt, exact same everything. Like it was beautiful. It's my favorite costume I've ever done. Yeah, just because it was exactly
Jason
right.
Voorhees.
Yeah,
Gen 1 Jason Voorhees, if you will.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that was probably my favorite.
Did you have any scary dreams when you were a kid or reoccurring nightmares?
The only one I had over and over again, and I still remember, was a dream about that image from Black Christmas, actually, that I saw really young. Because the dream was just me getting up in the middle of the night to get water or something, and that eye in the crack was just randomly like growing out of walls. Like it wasn't in any door frame. It was just like only just the one, but it was like in strange places, like in the crevice between like the wall and the ceiling or something like that. And I had that a couple times, especially after I saw it, but otherwise not really. I don't think. Don't have a lot of nightmares.
Lucky you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was there ever a time in your childhood when you were terrified of something in real life?
I don't think so. I had a really, straight up normal childhood. Pretty boring and lucky that way, I guess. Yeah, no. I was all in on the horror stuff, despite what my mom wanted me to do. But she was the voice of reason in that scenario. Which, honestly, looking back, it's probably like it could have been bad. It could have really given me some weird issues or something seeing this stuff so young. And thankfully it didn't. But so she was in the right position probably to try and limit that, I think.
Yeah.
She was unsuccessful, though. Very unsuccessful.
But
no.
But it is good to have a control in an experiment, you know?
Exactly. You got to keep it on the rails a little bit. But no, just a normal childhood, great childhood, normal.
Okay.
Cool.
Flipping that question around, was there ever a time in your childhood when you felt exceptionally calm or safe or at bliss?
I mean, whenever I was watching horror movies or reading horror.
Good answer.
That, and also when I went out with me and my dad would go out like every Friday back. This was back when people were still collecting VHS tapes. There were no DVDs at that point. And we would go to the mall and go to HMV, which again is not really around anymore. And would get the kind of the deluxe at the time. They released this company called Anchor Bay Entertainment. I don't know if you know the company. They're not around anymore. They used to release kind of the first run of movies like Demons or Tenebra or Phenomena or all these Italian horror movies in like kind of a deluxe version with the extra trailer and interviews and stuff on VHS tape in these big clunky like clamshell cases. And every week we would go out and we would get one of those, a new one we'd never seen, and we'd watch it. And we'd go by the comic book store and we would get a pack of Mars Attacks cards because we were collecting those. Mars Attacks and Dinosaurs Attacks. And that was our ritual like every Friday, Saturday. So that is...
Those cards are pretty graphic from what I remember, weren't they?
Oh my God, they're just so gross. Yeah. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Being flayed and grinded alive and shit. Mars Attacks, it's you think like a card collecting thing. Like, oh, this is nice. Like Garbage Pail Kids. It was worse than Garbage Pail Kids.
Yeah. It was much worse than Garbage Pail Kids. Mars Attacks was at a certain level with people getting like melted by ray guns and shit. But then the Dinosaurs Attacks were like almost a response to Mars Attacks, and they were way worse. Just like, oh my God, like school buses being peeled open and kids being eaten in droves by like T-Rexes and people individually impaled on the separate horns on a Triceratops at their wedding. And like, that's crazy stuff. It's great. Yeah. So we would collect those, and that was kind of our ritual. And then watch, Don't Torture a Duckling or something at home. Some wild horror movie. Yeah.
So there's the next, go ahead.
I was just going to say Don't Torture a Duckling is pretty...
That's a rough one. That's a rough one.
This is still childhood. We're not even in the teenage years yet.
That might have been more into the there was a little bit of discretion. So that might have been blending together. I doubt he never showed me any like SA stuff or anything really troubling like that. It was just fake gore. And then he always was very much like, sat me down afterwards like, this is fake. Here's how they did this. One of the books he gave me was this book called God, what was it called? Bizarre something. It's by Tom Savini Tom Savini book, sorry. And he just goes through all his movies and like lays out with diagrams how all these different effects were done, where the actor was hiding, what part was fake, what wasn't. So I still have that. So
cool.
that really helped as well, having him there to also be like, this is all fake, this is clearly fake, and also like a really cool book that clearly lays out all the ways it's fake, kept it from ever being something traumatizing or scary. And made it into kind of a fun, interesting, creative thing, I guess.
Right. How old were you when he gave you that book?
That I was probably on the 12 or 13, probably in my teens. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's barely in the teens. 13.
Yeah, 13. The precipice. Yeah, the very brink of it. Yeah.
Still counts. Counts.
I think so.
Teenage years. Okay, so you mentioned Stephen King's It. Don't Torture Ducklings, I think you said, was kind of on the cusp as well.
Yeah.
Any other media really jump out to you from your teens?
No, I mean, just a lot of, I was just in sucking up and watching any horror stuff I could in a voracious way. So it all kind of blends together. Yeah, no, I mean, just everything, especially like Italian horror. I was really into Italian horror. Obviously, the Evil Dead trilogy was really big for me as a teenager. Just stuff like that, I guess. Yeah, I think that was right around maybe when Saw was coming out, the first one. So I was pretty into that in theaters. Yeah, I don't know, just everything, I guess.
Okay. Well, usually the first things that come to mind for a reason. So I think you started with Italian horror there. Anything in particular jump out to you from that?
Oh, I mean, I was just obsessed with I was a big gore fan. I mean, when I was younger, I was really into it I was really into slasher movies. I was really into Italian horror. I was really into seeing like the uncut versions of everything. It was very almost edgelordy, like looking for like the goriest stuff possible. I've moved on from that a lot. It's not really what I look for in horror movies anymore. It's kind of incidental. If it's there, I can appreciate it. Context is everything, but like I'm much more into it for, story, atmosphere, vibes, like that kind of thing. But when I was, 14, 15, 16, I was all about that. And Italian horror movies are very of that time period, and of certain directors are incredibly violent, ultra violent and gory. Zombie, The Beyond, House by the Cemetery, all that stuff, City of the Living Dead. And I also appreciated like the bleak vibes of those films, which I still do, even more so than the gore nowadays. There's like a poster for Fulci's Zombie, like right over my head right now from when I was 16 that I've framed up.
Awesome.
Next to a poster for The Thing. So it's kind of my two guiding movie lights, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good choices.
Yeah.
So with the slashers, the gore, and the edgelord stuff, I could see, pushing boundaries is something that's very teen, shall we say.
Yeah, I think so.
But what about the bleak stuff?
I mean, I've always loved bleak horror. And when I say bleak, I mean like almost existential, I guess. I've always loved cosmic horror because I feel like it touches on that stuff, weird fiction. It all kind of like runs into each other like a daisy chain. But I did like especially the Gates of Hell trilogy, the Fulci films, like City of the Living Dead, The Beyond, and House by the Cemetery for their unrelenting, like weird nightmare logic and bleakness. And I still do. I look for that in any horror movie. I think I'm not sure why I like that specifically in fiction so much, but I do. I think
defeats the next question I was going to ask you.
Oh shit! Gotcha. 40 chess, 10 steps ahead.
Right? I was going to ask you if you had any idea why you were drawn to the bleak stuff, but if you don't know,
I find it like I don't know. I find it. I don't like, especially in horror. I don't like stuff that's too pat. I don't like every question answered, every explanation granted. I think that there are exceptions that prove the rule, but if you're going to explain something in horror, I don't think that can ever make something scarier. I think it's always going to be scarier without that explanation. And I also kind of like when horror is antagonistic to me, the reader or the viewer. I like, being screwed around by horror. I like not having everything explained to me and just being left to kind of put pieces together myself. And I think that, a bleak conclusion or a bleak atmosphere in horror film or games or fiction especially really lends itself to that, and just like both punishing the reader and also letting them be more of an active participant as they read by putting it together themselves. If any of that makes sense at all. Yeah,
that makes perfect sense.
Cool,
it's different. It's to borrow a phrase that I kind of hate, but it makes sense. It subverts expectations. It's not the norm and not what you're expecting. You have so many stories out there that have a nice, not necessarily happy ending, but a tied up ending. Everything is explained. So it's almost refreshing to get something where it's just like, oh, well, shit's just fucked.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Most of the horror movies on my top 10 are like end with shit's just fucked. I think.
So Saw, I could see that kind of also falling under the gore / edgelord stuff.
Yeah.
And bleak ending.
And bleak ending. Yeah. Though actually that first one is not like anywhere near as gory as the reputation that series has. It's actually just kind of like it's a murder mystery sort of thing, like a serial killer drama with like grisly traps, but there's no real gore in it. I love the ending of that movie though. That's like such a great twist ending. Oh my God. So good. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I didn't distract you.
So I was going to put Saw with that stuff.
Yeah.
But Evil Dead, I'm guessing, is it more the comedy or?
Well, I saw Evil Dead 1 first, and I liked I was on board with how gory that one is, and also I found it really frightening when I saw it. I think it's still
that was their intent.
Yeah,
they were serious in Evil Dead, and then they saw how many people found Evil Dead funny, so they're like, all right, let's make a comedy. I think
Evil Dead 2 is a masterpiece. I think Evil Dead 1 is a masterpiece, but like I hate seeing complete people just. I feel like there are people who have seen Evil Dead 2 first or Army of Darkness first, and they're just like, the whole series is a comedy. It's like, no, it's not. Each entry has its own separate kind of thing going on. In Evil Dead 1, maybe it's funny in some ways because of their limitations, but it was very much an intent to be just scary, and I think it is scary, probably because of a lot of the limitations. But I was obsessed with that because I found it really scary, and the whole climax where everyone was melting into clay and oatmeal is wonderful. And then Evil Dead 2 is just a perfect movie. It's like it's a granted thing that that's a classic and incredible. I'm not a big fan of Army of Darkness, but those first two are amazing.
What do you think was scary about the first one?
How lonely it is. I think that you're really in that cabin, and just those black windows. It feels like there could be nothing outside of that cabin. I think it's just these people stuck in this impossible situation, which, has the book as a trigger for what causes everything to happen. Obviously, they read the spells and everything. But other than that, there's no rhyme or reason why any one person gets possessed, in what order, what they can do to stop it, how to help anything. They're just in this impossible situation. It's your best friends and your loved ones, and there's no one coming to help. You're outside of time and space, and it just really feels like it, I guess. It's very punishing atmosphere in that one. I still like it for that. I like it over Evil Dead 2 for that atmosphere more than anything else. Yeah.
Okay. So for the adult years, then, what media jumps out to you as being memorable for adult years?
Well, I mean, a real impact on me was in university. I got really into found footage horror, specifically. Okay. I saw Blair Witch when it came out. That's another one I saw when I was a kid, or whenever it came out. I don't know. It's all fuzzy. I'm not really sure whether I was a high schooler or what, but that one traumatized me. But then really getting into that subgenre when I was a little older in university and seeing stuff like Ghost Watch, which is a stone cold classic. If you haven't seen it, you should watch Ghost Watch. Lake Mungo. Oh my God, Ghost Watch is incredible. It's still one of the scariest things I've ever seen. Getting really into those movies, and then that translating over the last 5 or 6 years into my art and the kind of art I make has been really rewarding and really good, I think. Yeah. So probably that, I guess, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. Even though it may have been back in earlier section, let's go back for Blair Witch. What did you like about Blair Witch?
Oh, because it felt real. They did such a good job making that into something that could feasibly be a real discovered tape that for some reason they're putting in theaters for everyone to see. But oh my God, when it came out, they had websites and TV specials devoted to where are the missing people, the history of the serial killer, the fake serial killer they made up for the movie, everything, all leading up to when the movie actually hit theaters. And God, did it hit like a truck. I remember even then, the kind of discourse that happens on movies these days, like Skinamarink is a modern day example of it, where half the people who saw it, including me, were that was one of the scariest fucking things I've ever seen in my life. And then the other half are it's just some guys filming trees in the woods. It's you're literally missing the forest for the trees in this
right.
scenario. It's not about them being lost in the woods looking for trees. It's about the fact that they are going in a straight line, but they keep finding the same creek that they walked past. It's about the noises in the pitch black. Oh, it's all the implicit stuff. And it's if you can't see past what you're actively being shown, then you're not gonna don't you have an imagination? Come on. And it's the same thing. Yeah. For Skinamarink, I think, is another example where it's the same thing for me, where it's on the surface, it's a shot of a ceiling for an hour and a half, but it's if you let it get in under your skin, it's horrible. It's so scary. But similar thing with Blair Witch. I remember seeing that and being traumatized. You don't see the witch, you don't see anything, but when it cut to black at the end, it was a sucker punch. I remember driving home and just being in the passenger seat as my dad drove home and being just traumatized by that one. I loved it so much. It's
funny that we finally got to that, because that's where I thought you were going to go with that, is the fact that it had another bleak ending.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it does have a super bleak ending. Yeah. Incredibly bleak ending. Yeah. No, I love it. It's great. And not only bleak, but incredibly ambiguous. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that ambiguity is important. And I love it so much. Yes.
Let's see. What about Ghost Watch?
Oh my God. I could talk about Ghost Watch for another full hour. Neither of you have seen it or heard of this?
No.
Okay. So Ghost Watch is a fake TV special that aired on Halloween night in Britain. I'm not sure in the BBC channel in Britain in 1992. And it was preceded by a warning saying that it was all fake. It was actors, because when you watch it, it's real talk show hosts and news reporters from the time, that were recognized as being reporters. But what happened was if you listen to the urban legend about it, is the warning that it was all fake was at the start of the program, but there was a football game before it that ran long. So it went over the warning and ate it, and then it just dropped people, the viewers, right into this special where it was supposed to be these recognized reporters and newscasters and people at the time investigating a real life haunting for Halloween night in the UK.
So it's a supernatural War of the Worlds.
It is exactly a supernatural War of the Worlds. Exactly. Yeah. And as it goes on, it gets creepier and creepier. And it's just, some of the stuff is so scary. And people watching at the time, exactly like War of the Worlds, thought it was really happening. And were calling in saying all these things were happening. And like people, protests were happening. And it got really, really bad. And they got so many complaints that they locked it away and they never showed it again on TV ever. They locked it up. And it only just got a proper release on Blu-ray last year, I think, from, Channel or 101 Films, something like that. I have the box set. It's incredible. But before that, you could only watch it on illegal uploads on YouTube or Internet Archive.
LiveWire.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. But it is, I watched it in my second year of university with my roommate at the time. And I distinctly remember watching it because I rented it from the video store that I worked at in university, which was this Toronto-based video store that just had really rare, like genre fair horror movies and stuff. And I watched it with my roommate at the time at like 2 p.m. in like our sunlit dorm room. And we were both petrified.
Still scared the shit out of you.
Still scared the shit out of us.
Plus the fact that it was like basically barred from TV, I would say that's a sign of success.
It's amazing. It's still I watch it every Halloween night. It's a tradition now. And if you haven't seen it, I cannot recommend it enough. It's amazing.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to check this one out. Also, it's very early for such a found footage style film. That wasn't a very common thing back in those days.
Yeah, no, 92. I guess not. I don't recall specifically when Blair Witch came out. I think it might have been before that, but or maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, it was definitely very rare for the genre. Still, I think is one of the top entries in that subgenre is Ghostwatch.
What'd you like about Lake Mungo?
Oh, Lake Mungo is amazing because it is, for one thing, on one hand, it has one of the single scariest images I've ever seen in a film, horror or not, ever. It has one moment that the film builds up to that is just petrifying. And on the other hand, it's scary and eerie, but it's also like a deeply sad film. It's a really mournful ghost story. And it's just those two things work together in a way that I've never seen specifically in a found footage or a faux documentary kind of format. Yeah, it's just really, really well done. It's very authentic. And God, that image is just Hall of Famer scary image, I swear. Especially like it's scary when you look it up on Google or whatever. But if you watch the film and they build up to it, it's, oh my God. It's horrible. That, if I had to do a top 5 found footage horror movies, it would be Ghostwatch, Lake Mungo for sure. This film called Noroi the Curse, which is a Japanese film that's just got a Blu-ray finally announced, that's coming out pretty soon. This movie called Savage Land. Not a lot of people have seen it, but I talk about that on literally every podcast. I find a way to talk about it.
Savage Land is so good.
It's so good. It's incredible. And if it was in front of more people's eyes, if it was on Netflix or something, excuse me, it would have a lot of the acclaim it really deserves. But it's an incredible film. And then maybe the last one would be something like Wreck or maybe Blair Witch Project. I'm not sure. But there's a lot to choose from. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm debating on whether or not to go into spoiler territory for this Lake Mungo image.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, we could just say, spoilers for Lake Mungo from this point on. If you haven't seen it, I don't know, you might want to skip ahead a little or something.
So, what was scary about it to you?
It is, well, the image in question it's about a young girl who's died, and a teenager who's died, and in the events leading up to her death. Like her parents are kind of uncovering all the stuff that she was doing in a very like Laura Palmer Twin Peaks kind of way. Mm-hmm. And it all leads up to this footage that's found on her phone, abandoned at the shore of this Lake Mungo, this area in Australia, I think. And the image is part of some cell phone footage she recorded where it's revealed that at this party, she wandered off from everybody into the kind of the darkness and the wilderness of this like desolate area. And saw her own corpse approach her before she died.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes about like this knowing your grisly death is coming. You're knowing it's on its way. This doom is coming.
Like seeing it approaching, quite literally.
Literally approaching your own bloated corpse. So like it's a ghost story in that she is around as a ghost throughout the film. And it's about her it's a ghost story and it's about her, the echoes of her that are being uncovered after she's passed. But it's also not a ghost story in that she saw something supernatural that was not her kind of portenting her death in the form of her own corpse, which I think is just such a horrible, horrible thing. Like that would be so horrible to see. And also having to live with that after the fact, like, it's coming. It's on its way. I think that's such a grisly, existentially horrifying concept. And it's always stuck with me. And the image of her corpse is on this grainy, like Nokia flip phone footage. It's just so haunting. It's horrible. It's great. It's wonderful. But it's all about the build up to it as well. Like it's scary just seeing it as an image, but like the build up is unreal.
I could appreciate the Laura Palmer reference. I see how that connects.
Yeah, very much so.
So Nora the Curse, what'd you like about that?
Oh man, Nora the Curse is, oh God, it's amazing. It is, it's the thing that stands out to me that I like the most about it. It is incredibly scary, but most found footage films you'll find kind of limit the medium down to one tape. It's like somebody was recording during some horrible disaster, or like Blair Witch. It's one person's camera that they're filming, or a couple of cameras, I think, in one situation. But Noroi is ambitious in that it takes many, many different pieces of snippets of footage from different venues, and has, in the context of the film, it's basically about this paranormal investigator who has gone missing, investigating this case for his latest tape. And he goes missing, his house burns down. And this is all told to you at the beginning of the film by his company, his production company. And then like 6 months later, his company gets this box in the mail, and they open it up, and it's a camcorder. And it's basically the missing camcorder from this investigator who's gone missing. And he has a tape that he's made that they then transition into, where he has cobbled together this 90-minute tape from all different sources to tell this one, kind of put together this conspiracy in like a red string board kind of way. So there's like clips of news reports. There's clips from game shows, late night talk shows, like interviews he did, interviews other people did, investigating scholars, academics, all these different things coming together. And slowly this blurry picture starts to come into focus of this sprawling kind of conspiracy about a curse and a demon. And it's just, it really is a cinematic experience of kind of feeling the noose tighten. Like really just slowly the implications become clearer and clearer until it's clear everyone is already doomed. They've been doomed since the start, and you didn't know. And this is the way that you're doomed. It's really scary. It's really great. It's just one of the all-timers. It's just, it's one of the best. It's really good. And like I said, I've never seen a found footage movie that's so ambitious in putting together all these different pieces in such a way, like a real puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the last one? Savage Land?
Savage Land is a movie about a town on the Mexican-American border that over the course of one night, everyone in the town is slaughtered brutally, except for one man who's a Mexican immigrant photographer who's a gardener working. And he's the only guy left alive. So the movie's basically about how immediately all these bad actors, conservative politicians, just put the blame on him for very racist reasons. Like he did it clearly. He made his way through town because he knew where everyone was, and he just killed everyone in this whole town. And it's very clear that that's not what happened, but everyone is
right. As completely absurd as it is that he would be able to do that, everyone still sticks to it. Like, oh yeah, of course he did it.
It's the Mexican immigrant, of course. Right? It's a very political film in that way, and it's very depressing in that way to see everyone jump to that. But the crux of the film is that he was a photographer. And whatever was happening over the course of this day and night, he was taking photos. And as the film goes on, the scares are never from any footage or video or anything like you would think. It's all talking heads after the fact, except for these photos that are slowly spooled out. I think there's 12 photos that go in chronologically over the course of the events over the day and night. And they're the imagery in the photos is so frightening that it just completely carries the film. Like, the film's great, but if the photos were not scary, it wouldn't work. But they are so scary. It's so frightening. It's a jump scare from a still image. It's crazy. They give you jump scares just from photos they're showing you that have been taken a long time past. And again, it's another thing where, like, you know, it's about you kind of playing detective as the film goes on and piecing together what the film is feeding you with these clues in a similar way as Noroi. Mm-hmm. And it's just masterfully done. It's such a good movie. It's such a smart movie, smartly written movie. And whoever did those photos, I don't know who made those photos, but they are haunting. They're haunting photos. Mm. It's great. I cannot recommend it enough. It's one of my favorites.
So we'll do another spoiler warning here for this now. Excuse me. It's what was scary in the photos.
I don't want to say it's as pat as what it's kind of like what it's showing, because it leaves a lot of room for ambiguity in terms of what's actually happening here.
It does. Yeah.
But the long story short is that it's a zombie thing where this horde of zombies are coming. You see them coming over the hill, just these like lone silhouettes of people, and then just like tearing people apart in the streets in this very like frenetic way. It's never really spelled out as zombies, but it's something horrible, and it's just there's so much room for. Oh, it's interpretation. Yeah. It's hard to describe why the photos are so good without actually showing the photos in the circumstance that they're presented in the film, in the context of the film. But they're just the perfect balance of being just the right amount of detail to be extremely scary and enough vagueness to leave it up so your head kind of fills in the gaps. But they're just wonderful. They're really good. I need a set that just comes with. I need a Blu-ray box set of that film that comes with the photos in like a little envelope. That'd be incredible. But yeah, it's great. It's probably on Tubi or something, but it deserves to be seen by as many people as possible.
Okay. I actually discovered it free on YouTube, of all things.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
I sat down and watched it one day. I was like, this is amazing. Why is this free?
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. No, it needs... if I could make it happen myself, I would try and champion a Blu-ray to exist.
I would buy 5 of them.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
So the next 2 questions are going to be over your entire life and can be any genre, not just horror.
Yeah.
What movie have you watched more times than any other?
Okay. It's a basic answer, but I think it's probably The Thing. I've seen The Thing a lot of times. That and, I think it's a tie between 2 movies. One's The Thing, which is a horror movie. Obviously, it's a classic. One of the best movies ever made. And another movie that is one of my absolute favorite movies, and I might have seen it more times than any others just because I show it to as many people as possible. It's this early 90s thriller drama called Miracle Mile. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, if you guys have heard of that film. Nope. It's by a director named Steve DeJarnette, I think. It's one of the best movies ever made. It's incredible. It's my top 5 forever. The less you look up about it, the better, though. If you just go and yeah, sorry. I know you're probably looking it up right now, but
that's right. Typing it right now.
Yeah. I love showing it to people blind because it's a movie that starts out as one thing and turns into another very quickly. And it's almost like kind of mean-spirited to do that, but it's such a unique experience to show people not knowing where that film is going to go. It's one of the best movies ever made. It's incredible. It's an incredible movie. The setup of the plot is that it's very much an LA set, like romantic comedy, where like this guy meets a girl, he falls in love instantly, and he meets her in a museum in LA. They set up this date to meet at this diner at like midnight to have go out dancing or something. Through this chain of events, the power goes out in this building. He oversleeps. He wakes up at like 3 a.m. He goes to the diner anyway. He's trying to get her number from her friend who works there to try and call her and explain it wasn't this. The power went out of the building. He's hanging around outside this diner. And then the phone rings in this telephone booth outside. And he picks up the phone, and then the rest of the movie happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I think it's always going to be a top 5 movie. It's amazing.
And it's got the Anthony Edwards guy from that Doctor TV show.
Yep, Anthony Edwards is incredible in it, and it's got a Tangerine Dream score. You know, it's good if it has a Tangerine Dream score. It's just, it's great. I can't talk about it too much or I'll spoil it, but man, it's a crazy movie.
Instead of digging into that one, maybe we'll come back to that because I understand you're trying to avoid spoilers, and Chris hasn't seen it.
That's when I specifically want to avoid spoilers for it. So very go in blind kind of movie. Yeah.
What about The Thing?
I mean, The Thing. Like, what can you say about The Thing in 2024? It's a masterpiece. It's a perfect film. Everything works.
That's why I wasn't going to ask you about it, because everybody just says that.
What can I say? I wouldn't change a thing about it. There's nothing to change. It's a perfect film. I have a Thing tattoo on my arm. I'm not a person to talk about anything about The Thing that is not the gold standard for film in general, I think.
Should be played in film class.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah, probably.
So normally the follow-up question to that is to ask what's the guest's favorite movie is, because sometimes the favorite is not the one that they've seen most often.
Yeah, I could give you 5.
Top 5 works.
Have you mentioned one that we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah. Right now, my top, let's see how many I can do. The Thing, obviously, is great. Miracle Mile is on there, always. There is a movie called All That Jazz. It's a Roy Scheider movie? Scheider. Yeah, by...
Scheider. Guy from Jaws?
The guy from Jaws. All That Jazz is incredible. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. It's a movie about musical theater, but it is very much not a movie about musical theater. It's devastating. It's incredible.
Okay.
It's from the director of Cabaret. I don't know if you've ever seen Cabaret. Also an incredible movie. I like All That Jazz better. There is a movie from the 90s that's this tragic, Yakuza film that is just unbelievable called Gonin. That's one of my top 5 favorite movies also. And then the last, I think I said 4. I can't count. The 5th one is either Exorcist 3, the 3rd one, because it is unbelievable. The towering performances. The writing is incredible. It kicks the ass of the original. I swear to God, it's a better film. That or this other film, this independent American horror film from the 70s called Messiah of Evil, which is just probably the best Lovecraft movie that has nothing to do with Lovecraft. Yeah, one of those. Yeah, they're all great. Yeah.
Let's talk about All That Jazz, because it's the kind of the odd duck here.
Yeah.
What do you like about it?
It's a drama about a guy basically realizing that he is dying. He's a choreographer for musical theater. It's very autobiographical of the director, whose name escapes me right now. Bob Fosse. It's about Bob Fosse, basically. So Bob Fosse is directing a movie basically about his own life and kind of tangling with kind of being a prick and being a bad person and not shying away from that about being a bad person, and kind of trying to take the good with the bad and the things that he did wrong by devoting himself so much to, this thing that ended up killing him, which he did die shortly after making the film.
Wow. So
it's a very heavy film about the way you live your life, I guess. It's, it's kind of up its own butt because it would have to be being directed by a guy about his own life. But it's also incredibly honest and harsh. And God, it's devastating. It's a devastating film. There are many.
Is there any jazz?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when it says all that jazz, it just means everything, all that jazz.
Okay,
yeah. But there's not specifically jazz. But there are musical numbers because it is about choreography for various musical numbers.
If you go on YouTube and you look up Bob Fosse, Little Prince, he did a thing. Shit, I can't think of the right word, but a little production maybe would be the best word of The Little Prince, and it's him and a boy in a desert. And I mean, it's not that long of a clip, his particular scene in this production, but I mean, what's maybe, because there is one song, so maybe 5 minutes, but it's just move after move after move after move after move after move. Every single one of them is a different move that MJ ripped off. Or maybe I shouldn't say ripped off, borrowed, whatever you want to say, but I don't even want to say. I don't want to say borrowed, because it is exact. You look at it and it's just holy fucking shit. 1, 2, 3. Just
damn.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But at the same time, it's also funny because you just you can't help but just laugh at it.
Yeah.
How ridiculous it is. Anyway. So yeah, when you mentioned his name, I recognize that. So that's interesting. So it's a movie that he did about, you said he was being introspective, but with his death coming up.
It's his own, it's kind of a very talented man a very like kind of flawed man looking back at his own life and kind of looking at warts and all in this really interesting, well done way. It's really good. Yeah, it's great.
Do you see any common threads about what kind of horror you like? Cannibalism, occult, metaphysical?
I mean, I like all, like, obviously I'll like some stuff over others. I shy away from gore nowadays. I like stuff, vibes. I mean, atmosphere really carries it through a lot. If that vibes will carry most horror movies for me, even if nothing else really works. But like existential horror, abstract horror, bleak horror, cosmic horror, if it's cosmic horror that isn't just like there's a squid there or tentacles, because that's boring.
Right.
Yeah.
I do have a real soft spot for certain slasher movies, usually in the summertime. That's when I watch a bunch of slasher movies.
As you do.
As you do. Yeah, it's the time for it. But otherwise, yeah, just kind of like weird, bleak horror, slower the better, that kind of thing. But I like everything, really. The only one I really don't care for, because I think it's so overdone and cliche, and there's never any real change in the formula that was established by the first one to do it, is Possession. It's just boring. The only good Possession movies are ones that break out of the Christian evil and religion, and go into like, you get like Indonesian possession films or Thai possession films. There's a great Thai possession film called The Medium that is like the.
I think I've heard of that one.
It's dope. It's great. It's, there's exceptions to any rule, but like if you're doing The Exorcist again with the young priest and the old priest and the little girl in the bed and all, please spare me. Oh my God.
How many ways can you skin a cat?
Seriously, God.
So normally this would be the spot where we would talk about any common themes that keep cropping up, and then maybe talk a little bit about how those things intersect with horror as a genre.
Yeah.
There's 2 or 3 things that I am looking at that kind of all subsume under one topic. There's like maybe actually 4 or 5 or 6 things, depending on how you want to group these. But the 2 main headings I would put are existential and joy. Under existential, we've got spots for dangerous / antagonistic, bleak, ambiguous, warts and all. I think all of those fall under existential because that is existence. Existence encompasses all of that stuff. It is dangerous. It can be bleak. It is also ambiguous. It is, warts and all. It's not always pretty.
It's true. Yeah.
And then there's also the joy of, the excitement of a lot of the different things that you've touched on, and also the relationship with your father.
Of course. It's part and parcel with my love of horror. It's just, because it introduced to me by my dad, and it's just always going to be associated.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely.
We obviously have a good reason for understanding why, you've got that connection with your dad, but what about the existential part of it? Is there something in particular that speaks to you about that in the horror genre that you can't find anywhere else?
I'm sure you can find similar stuff, but I think that horror is always going to be the genre that lets people speak to the truest parts of, I don't know, life, humanity, nature, philosophy, politics, everything. Like, I feel like it's always been kind of the litmus test for the world, I guess. It really feels like, I don't know, I guess it gets to the base of things the easiest, in a way that
it certainly has less of a filter, that's for sure.
It has less of a filter. It's like, it's such a great conduit for everything, in my opinion. Like, I don't know. Yeah, it feels like the greatest tool for to kind of like dig deep and really like look at stuff, I guess.
Well, I'm going to question that because you say it speaks to the truest parts of life. And I'm thinking maybe certain sections, but like, for example, speaking to the truest part of love or the truest part of joy. I think maybe other genres speak to those things maybe better than horror.
I would agree. Yeah. Yeah.
That depends on if that's your kink, Yeah.
So the parts that horror speaks to more truly.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you finish that.
Well, maybe it's the fact that, like, it's easier for other genres, like you said, and other things to speak to the stuff that's more on the surface, and horror gets to the stuff that people don't want to look at so much. So you see less of it, but they can do it in a way that is palatable, in a way to, kind of reckon with in a way. Like, it's about every horror book and every horror movie is about death in a different way. And that's something I think that still, as a society, we can't look head on at, we can't really face. So it's a way to kind of like, couch it in a way that makes it slightly more palatable to engage with. And I think that's a really interesting and unique thing that horror has. But yeah, you're completely right, where there's a million different facets of humanity and love, compassion, all these things that maybe horror is not specifically suited for. But maybe it is. I don't know. I'm sure there's a case that could be made by people who are smarter than me for that to happen. I'm not that person, but yeah, no, I just like with that it's so multifaceted. I think I don't know.
So if I were to sum that up, maybe into a word, there's dread would be one word. Obviously, the words horror and terror themselves, maybe would touch on that.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why exploring that is important to you?
I guess it's not. I wouldn't say important, but I find it fascinating and interesting, and just seeing all the different ways that can be interpreted in different, masks and different facets and different ways of tackling these issues and coming at it sideways for different people. I find all of that very interesting, especially with the weirder, bleaker, more ambiguous stuff, obviously. I think you can break down pretty much any horror movie or horror novel or horror story into a real life fear and a way that is being, dressed up so that somebody can tackle it in a way that isn't as abrasive. But I don't know. I just find it interesting, I guess. And I guess it is important. I think that people need that release and that valve and that, tool, that bludgeon to hit a skeleton over the head with or something. I don't know.
Going to try to peel back another layer of the onion here. And this may be a difficult question to ask, but the one that comes to mind is, why is it interesting? And the reason that I say it that way is because when you say, well, I find horror interesting, I could quickly turn that around and be like, well, why isn't rom-com interesting? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, a part of this might be just because, I've spent however many years, like decades, like really being submerged in horror, and I can see all these different facets. Maybe those facets are there in something like rom-com, and I just am not experienced in it or well-versed in it to see them. But I mean, like, I've always been attracted to horror specifically because of like monsters. When I was a kid, monsters are cool, right? So I went there first, and then I've been able to see all these different facets of horror where that interest has never been in a different genre, like the drama genre or like romantic comedy or something. So I'm not like well versed to speak on. I don't know what I'm talking about in terms of romantic comedy. So
right,
maybe it's what I know, right? And I can see all these different shades and tones to it. I'm sure there's an argument could be made for anything else, but I love how vast horror is and how multifaceted and how there are all these different tones and shades and different things and ways of speaking about it.
Right. On those two things. So there are kind of two things that you mentioned there. Monsters are cool. And it's what you know. Yes. The monsters are cool part of it. That kind of points to something that I briefly touched on earlier, but didn't really go into too much. Other calls that we've had, I had mentioned earlier about like a dividing line where people were scared of something earlier and then they became fans of it later on. Yeah. There are some guests who are just, it's a joy from the start. Yeah. And there's kind of two ways of looking at not just love of horror, but love of a lot of things in life. That there are people who do things because they are drawn towards something. Yeah. And then there are some people that do something because they're trying to avoid something else. Yeah. And so the conversation about monsters are cool if there's a particular draw towards something and there's just a general joy there that actually can be harder to suss out a particular reason for, because that why are you happy? Like that's a really difficult question to answer. In terms of it's what you know part of it, I mean, that kind of ties back to what you said about your dad sitting you down and explaining to you, this is how they're doing this, and this is, this is this, and this is that. And so understanding the, what's the word I'm looking for? Receiving some sort of a wisdom from someone older is
Mhm.
it's also something that's come up on some of our other calls where we've had guests who have said, I had an older sibling or an older, a parent or an aunt or uncle that were fans of horror, and they kind of like educated me on how to approach the topic in a way that was, I don't want to, maybe healthy isn't the right word.
I think you could say healthy, like,
Yeah.
clearing the air about it, making it a known quantity.
Right. Framing it maybe
Framing it's a good, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely of the camp of like, this was something I loved from a very young age. There were definitely things that scared me, but the things that scared me just made me like everything overall, horror more.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably like horror less if I didn't have those touchstones that were terrifying when I was a kid. And even, like the odd thing all the way up into my 20s and 30s, it's still a treasure if I can see a new horror movie and it actually gets a reaction out of me. It gets me scared in some way or creeped out or unnerved. I'll remember that. That'll really plunk itself in my head. But yeah, I was fascinated by monsters from a young age as well. Monsters were and still are a huge draw. I mean, I've made my entire, creative career, make my living off of making monsters more or less in different contexts. So yeah, it's been a love thing for sure.
It's kind of funny that I was busy making a note here to myself so I wouldn't forget what it is I wanted to say, and then I forgot the thing that you said that made me think of the thing.
Oh no,
that I wanted to say. But Chris is going to laugh here. We joked about having a Joseph Campbell jar. Are you familiar with Professor Campbell's work?
I know that he has like the hero's quest and like that whole philosophy. I don't know if that's the word, but I haven't read it myself. I haven't really I'm not educated on it. I just know of it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So the book you're probably thinking of is called A Hero with a Thousand Faces.
That's the one. Yeah.
It was I believe it was the first book that he wrote, and basically what he did there, we'll back it up a little bit. So before writing that book, what he was doing is he was studying the world's religions and mythologies all over the planet, all throughout time, whether it was 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago or 4,000 years ago. And one of the last things that he did, and it was working on before he passed away, was he was working on putting together an encyclopedia of all the mythologies of the entire world. And one of the things that he did is, if you were to take a comparative religion class in college, often what they would do is say, okay, here are the major religions of the world, and here's what makes them different. He kind of tried to flip that around and say, well, here's all the things that they have in common, and here's all these other religions and mythologies that are spread all over the world in 4, 5, 6,000 years apart. And they've got so many things in common. Why do they have so many things in common? And if we can figure out why these same themes keep cropping up over and over and over again across thousands of years, then maybe that can teach us something about what it means to have the human experience. And if we can understand our own experience of living life better, then maybe we could more accurately address our needs as humans. And one of the, I don't know if he made a book or not, but maybe a speech that he wrote, but there was something where he referred to what he called the 4 functions of mythology. And I can't remember the proper terms that he used. Like one of them was pedagogical. He used the proper terms for each of the 4. But I'll summarize them. The first one is to instill awe, a sense of awe with the universe, instill the idea that there are greater things out there than we can ever understand or comprehend. The second is to explain as much as we can about the universe that surrounds us. And the third one is to explain the society we live in and how to be a productive member of the society, what the expectations are of you in the society that you live in. And then the last one, the purpose of mythology is to help us understand our own individual life's arc. Meaning there are developmental stages for every person from childhood through adolescence, adulthood, middle age, and towards the end of life. And there are different challenges that go with each of those and the different stressors that we deal with at different phases in our life, and how do we deal with those.
Yeah.
And now is the part where I wish I remember what you said, because there was something that you said that tied into that last one about the personal life arc. Shit. It's what's annoying about this is like, I'll go back to edit this and I'll be able to hear what it is that you said.
Of course, then you'll remember.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can see some through line there in terms of like maybe using monsters from a young age is like, I don't know, identifying with monsters, and I'm not sure. I'd have to go back myself and see what I said. I don't know.
There was something there about the joy of the genre.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely, and sharing.
And then I think there's something about your father sharing maybe an approach or framing the genre in a way. And then I think I was thinking that you were then also kind of exploring the existentialism part of horror as sort of tangential to exploring that personal life arc. And so maybe the mythology of horror sort of paralleling that, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Yeah. I mean, I could definitely see something like that.
I mean, other than digging into whatever that is anymore, I think we got a pretty good summary of your love of horror and the things that are important to you about the genre and why you enjoy digging into it. I mean, really, I guess the only other thing we could ask is, is there anything that you think is relevant that we didn't ask about, or maybe that you thought about something earlier in the call and then didn't get to say it because the conversation took a left turn? No,
I mean, this has been great. I'm not used to having such interesting questions on a podcast. Honestly, this has been it's really good. It's been really good and really.
You can say on a Sunday morning that too.
Well, that too. Also on a Sunday morning, kind of like reckoning with my life path on a Sunday morning, slightly hungover from drinking and dancing. But it's been it's been great, and it's weird how there's that kind of like frisson between like the love of really doomy horror and like also finding such joy in it and sharing it and breaking it down. And I don't know. Yeah, there's definitely a lot there.
It's an interesting dichotomy for sure. Yeah, the yin and yang, if you will, of existential, not necessarily dread, but just existential everything and joy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I think it is, everyone's, dealing with life and the way the world is, and the world increasingly being the way the world is. And it's just a tool to kind of like peel some of that back and think about it, I guess, in a weird way. And have fun while you're doing it, because it's also entertaining.
Acceptance.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we very much appreciate your time.
Of course.
Before we wrap up, do you want to again let everybody know what you're currently working on?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really. I'm working on a book project that I hope to announce pretty soon. I don't know if I can talk about it yet, but hopefully I will soon. And doing some concept art for other things that I can't talk about, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about soon.
Lots of secrets.
A lot of secrets right now. If you want to follow me, I'm still on all the social medias at either Slimy Swamp Ghost or Trevor Henderson. Mostly I use Instagram to just recommend movies. I love recommending obscure horror movies on Instagram. I'm on like number 98 or 95 now, I think. That's the main use for social media for me these days. I also post art, obviously. Yeah. Otherwise, that's hopefully I'll be able to talk about some of those projects soon, but for now they're kind of secret.
Okay. Well, I will get together with you offline either way and put together a bio page for you on our website. So anybody who wants to find you can just come to our website and then go to the episodes page, go to Trevor Henderson, and then we'll link to whatever it is that you want us link to there.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So again, thank you to you, and thank you to anybody out there listening. Please do come visit us at horrormakesushappy.com. We'll have the bio page for Trevor and also a list of people that we are trying to get in touch with, hopefully to have on the show at some point. If you can get us in touch with them, let us know. Feel free to support in any other way that you can, like, subscribe, all that kind of fun stuff.